Okay, so I'm gonna go over 5.3, which is simplifying complex fractions. So um, complex fractions, which I'll show you right here, are just like a fraction over a fraction, more or less. So they look scarier than they are. So don't let it like freak you out. So the best way to do it, that the notes suggest and that I think is going to be easiest, is to kind of just read it out loud. So for this example right here, it's like 4/15 divided by 6/25. So I would just rewrite it like this: 4/15 divided by 6/25. And then if you remember from a few sections ago, when we are dividing fractions, we can just multiply by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal is where I'm just swapping the fraction. So I just keep the first one the same, 4/15, and then I'm going to times by the reciprocal, so I'm just going to flip it. So now it's going to be 25/6. Okay, so that's how I would solve that. So um, I will let you look over example 1. I'm going to do example 2 and 3. So for example 2, it's 2/3 divided by 5/9. So again, I would just rewrite it as 2/3 divided by 5/9. So then what I can do is I can say 2/3 times by the reciprocal, so I just switch them. So 9/5. Then I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to do 2 times, and then instead of 9, I'm going to say 3 times 3 divided by 3 times 5. So now I can see that I can cancel out this 3 with this 3. So I'm left with on top 2 times 3 divided by 5, which is 6/5. Okay, so that's my answer. So now example 3, a little more complicated. So now I'm just on the top, I've got fractions added together, on bottom subtracted. So I would suggest just looking at the top at first. So just looking at this right here and simplifying that into one fraction, and then do the same on bottom. So we get it into a form like example 2, and then we can kind of solve that. So at first, I'm just going to look at 1/2 plus 3/4. So we're adding, so I have to find a common denominator, so the LCD. So 2 is just going to stay as 2. 4 I can rewrite as 2 times 2. So I look what I have in common. I've got a 2 and a 2 in both. So for my LCD is going to have a 2 in it. And then I see, what do I have different? And I've got a 2. So times by 2. But then remember, this 2 right here, I've got to make sure to multiply up here. So I'm going to look this 2 where it applied to, so apply to that. So I've got to make sure I times this whole thing times by 2. So on top, I'm going to have 1 times 2 over our LCD, which is just 4. Then add, and I didn't need to times 3 by anything, so it's just going to be 3 by our LCD, which is 4. So I have 2 plus 3 divided by 4, which gives me 5/4. Okay, so that's going to be that top right there. Now, I'm going to look at the bottom one. So I have 2/3 minus 1/4. So looking at the bottom, I have 3, which I'm just going to keep as 3, and 4, which I can simplify into 2 and 2. In this case, though, I'm going to keep it as 4. And the reason I'm going to keep this one as in 4 is because I realized normally when I split it into 2, it's like when I did before, because I had a 2 in both denominators. But in this case, I can see that I'm going to have nothing in common, so I'm just going to keep it as a whole number. So I look at what do I have in common? I have nothing in common, which is fine. So what's different? I have this 3. So that means I've got to times the 4 by 3 down here. So I look for the 4, and I've got to times that by 3. Now, in this one, I've got a 4. That's also different. So this one up here doesn't have a 4, so I got to make sure to times it by 4. So I look for this 3. I'm going to times that whole thing by 4. And now my LCD is just going to be 3 times 4, which equals 12. So 4 times 2, which gives me 8, over our LCD, which is 12, minus 3 times 1 is 3 over our LCD, which is 12. So 8 minus 3 is 5/12. So this is my bottom part. So now I have 5/4 divided by, that should be a 12, 5/12. So I can rewrite this as 5/4 divided by 5/12, which then I can do 5/4. Oops. Okay, that's going to stay the same, and then I just multiply, and then I flip the second one. So I'm going to keep this as 5 times, but instead of 12, I'm just going to write it as 3 times 4 divided by 4 times 5. So I can see I can cancel this 4 out with this 4 and this 5 with this 5. So I'm just left with 3, which is my answer. Okay, so nothing too terrible, just finding kind of the common denominator and simplifying it. Okay, so I'll let you look over example 4 because they've kind of worked through it, and I'll do example 5. So again, I'm gonna look at the top and I'm gonna simplify that out, and then I'll look at the bottom and simplify it out. So the top, I've got x over y squared minus 1 over y. So to find the common denominator, I've got y squared, which I'm gonna rewrite as y and y, and then I've just got y, which I'll just write as y. So what do they have in common? 1y and 1y. So I'll just write that over there, a y. And then what's different? I got this y on top, so I gotta make sure I times that by y. So I look at where my y is right here, and I'm gonna times that all by y. So, and then of course I keep the y over there. So the y times y, which is y squared. So that first one, x over y squared, stays the same. X over LCD, I should say, which is y squared, because I didn't have to multiply it by anything. And then the second one I had to multiply by y. So 1 times y is just y over LCD, which is y squared. So now I can say x minus y over y squared. So that is going to be our top. Then for our bottom, I've got y over x squared minus 1 over x. So for my LCD, just looking at the bottoms, I've got an x squared, which I can rewrite as x times x, and I've got an x, which I'm just going to keep as x. So what's the same? I've got 1x here, 1x there. So my LCD will have an x in it, and then what's different? So I've got 1x here. So I got to make sure I times this part, my denominator with the x, by x. So I look at this, where my denominator is x, and I've got to times it by x. And then, of course, add an x to my LCD. So my LCD is going to be x times x, or x squared. So this first term, y, I didn't need to multiply anything by it, so it's going to be y divided by our LCD, which is x squared. And then minus, and then this 1 I had to times by x, so it's going to be x over our LCD, which is x squared. So now this, I'm going to be left with y minus x over x squared. So that's our bottom. So if I have room, I now have x. Okay. Come on. I've got x minus y over y squared, all divided by y minus x over x squared. So I can rewrite this as x minus y over y squared divided by y minus x over x squared. So then I can multiply them, x minus y over y squared times by, and flip it, so I've got x squared and then y minus x. Then I'm going to run out of room, but I'm going to try and show you. So okay, so this term right here, I'm going to rewrite to put my x first. So I'm going to show you this up here. So y minus x, I'm just going to rewrite so my x is first. So I've got that negative x plus y. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a negative value out of this so that that first term, that x is positive. So I'll just take a negative 1 out. And then inside I'm left with x minus y. Okay, and the reason I'm doing that is so I can cancel them out. So now on top, I'm going to have x minus y times by x squared. And on bottom, I'm going to have y squared times by negative 1 times by x minus y. So now I can say this can cancel with this. So I'm going to be left with x squared divided by negative y squared. And that's my answer. Okay, so that's the way, well, I don't know which way you're going to think is simpler. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is this method 2, which they're describing right here. So this method 2, you're going to find the least common denominator of the fractions in the bottom and the top, and you're going to multiply that LCD by the whole thing. So I'm just going to walk through this step. So looking here to find the LCD, so this 1, I can always rewrite 1 as 1 over 1. So I'm just going to look at the denominators. I have 1, which I'm just going to keep as 1. I have x squared, which I'm going to rewrite as x times x. Then I just have x, which I'll keep as x. Then I have x squared, which is x times x. So none of these have all one thing in common. But in 3 of them, I have 1x. Okay, so for this one, I just got to make sure I'm multiplying it by x. So my LCD is going to include an x. And then I can see that here, I've got an x and an x. So I just need to times this one by x and times this by x. So my LCD is going to be x squared. Hopefully that makes sense of how I'm finding that LCD. Remember you're seeing what's common and then kind of what's different and multiplying them by each other. So my LCD though is x squared. So once I find my LCD, I'm just multiplying. I just keep this the same, but I just multiply everything by x squared. So 1 times x squared is x squared. 25 divided by x squared. You can see that the x squares will cancel out, so you'll just be left with negative 25. And just multiply these out. If you kind of do that, you'll see that you'll get this. From there, this top one, they factor out to equal x minus 5, x plus 5. And then some things cancel out to give us this. So let me do example 7 for you. Okay, so I'm going to find the LCD, and just by looking at it, I know it's going to be x plus 2. But I'll write it out. So 8 divided by 1, remember, so I'm going to have a 1 here. I have x plus 2, which I'm just going to keep as x plus 2. 4x divided by x plus 2, so I have another x plus 2, which I'll just keep as x plus 2. And then for that 7 value, it's going to be 1 below. So I'm just going to rewrite that as 1. So I can see that these two have an x plus 2 in common, which means I would just need to times this by x plus 2, and this times x plus 2. So my LCD is just x plus 2. If it was easier for you too, you could say, okay, well, this value technically has a 1 and this has a 1. So then I would need to times this by 1 and this by 1. And then my LCD would be x plus 2 times by 1, which you could do, but x plus 2 times by 1 is just going to give me x plus 2. So I just kind of skipped that step. So our LCD is x plus 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the top first. So I have a minus 5x plus 2, and I'm going to times that whole thing by x plus 2. So when I do that, I'm going to have 8x plus 2 minus 5x plus 2 divided by x plus 2. So these are going to cancel out. So I'm just left with 8x plus 16, because I just multiplied that 8 out, minus 5, which is 8, let me write it below, which is 8x minus 11. So that's top. Now bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. So I have 4x, x plus 2, minus 7, all times by our LCD, which is x plus 2. So now I just have 4x times x plus 2 divided by x plus 2 minus 7 times x plus 2. So I can see that this x plus 2 and that x plus 2 will cancel out. So I'm left with 4x minus 7x minus 14. 4x minus 7x gives me negative 3x minus 14. So now on top, I was left with 8x minus 11, bottom 3x minus 14. That will be your answer. Okay. Okay, I see what, sorry. This is my first time looking at this. So this here, when you have, now they're just throwing in negative exponents. So you see how I have 2x to the negative 1. When you see a negative exponent like that, it means that this, that the exponent's going to, can go on bottom. So I can just rewrite this as 2x to the 1, which is just 2 to the x. So that's all that means. So if I have 3x to the negative 2, that negative 2 just implies to this x, so I can move that to the bottom. So that just equals 3 over x squared. And that exponent becomes positive when you move it to the bottom. So you can look at example 8. I'm going to do example 9. So I'm just going to rewrite this. I've got 1 plus 2, and that x is going to move to the bottom. So I have 2 over x minus 15, and same thing, that x goes to the bottom, so over x squared. And then down here I have 1 plus 3, and now I know that x is gonna go to the bottom. Okay, now that I've done that, I need to find the LCD. So I'm just gonna do this by looking at it. I see that my x squared is my greatest term, and if I times this by x, times this by x squared, times this by x squared, and times this by x, that would all give me x squared, which would be a common denominator. If that doesn't make sense, just write it out like I've done before, okay? So my LCD is x squared, which means I'm gonna times everything by x squared. So I have my top stuff. fact, I'm going to write it like this. Because what you would do is you go here times by x squared and here times by x squared. So I'm just going to do it. So 1 times x squared is just x squared plus 2 times x squared over x. And maybe this is the better one to look at. Then minus 15x squared divided by x squared. And now on bottom, I have x squared plus 3x squared times by x. So I just times all of these terms by x squared. Okay, now I'm going to see these x squares cancel out. This x cancels out with one of these x's, so I'm just left with x on top. And then the same for this one. I'm just left with 1x on top. So I'm left over with x squared plus 2x minus 15 divided by x squared plus 3x. Now I'm going to see if I can factor this, which I can. So the top is going to factor into positive 5 and x minus 2. And for the bottom, I can take an x out, so I'm left with x. Oh, this is wrong. This is a 3. X minus 3. And so, sorry, and then on the bottom, I'm left with x plus 3. I think I did something wrong, because my guess is these are supposed to cancel out. But that's right. 5 times 3, negative 15. And if I add those together. Okay, so that's fine what I did. So now, because I do want to get those canceled out, I'm going to leave the top the way it is. Oh no, that won't work. That must be it. I wonder if I did something wrong though. I might have done some silly math error. But I'm going to say that's our answer, and I'll try and figure it out. I might be doing just something stupid, but that's the basic idea. And that's it for 5.3. So you have two options where you can just look at the top and simplify that, and then look at the bottom and simplify that, or you can find the LCD and multiply everything by the LCD. Both are correct, will give you the same answer. I think there's just two different ways to solve these, so they're just giving you two different options. But it doesn't matter. If you prefer one or the other, then like, great. So yeah.